Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the latest instalment of Agile London. Great to see you all again. Thank you very much for joining. We have got two great speakers tonight, both who are co-founders of Agile Centre, and I'll let them give you a little bit more of an introduction on that as well when they start their talks. Just a couple of house rules, if I may. Please can you ensure you remain on mute throughout the talk. It's just to maintain fluidity, allow our speakers to have the opportunity to get their talks across, and for everyone else to be able to listen properly as well. I actively encourage questions, so please do get them across to me. If you could just put them privately in the chat though. Again, for fluidity, I will ask them to both speakers at the end. What it allows is everyone to hear the question come in and hear the speakers with their answers as well. So we have Jon Spruce and Karim Harbott tonight. Jon is up first. He is an enterprise Agile coach, Scrum at Scale trainer, and founding partner of Agile Centre. His talk tonight is Remote Burnout, how to spot the signs and take care of yourself when working from home. So, Jon, I'm going to pass over to you now.
Okay.
Go.
Thank you very much, Alex. Your internet connection started getting a bit drop out there, but hopefully mine's still connected okay. Standard sort of check. Can everyone hear me? It's just the standard thing everyone's day starts off with these days. Excellent
you look...
Say that again?
All good.
Thank you very much.
Off you go.
All right, thank you. Might need to go to Tina soon. So everyone should see my screen as well. I'm going to take you through a bit of a presentation today. Explain a little bit about what burnout is, and also a little bit about what things you can do while you're working from home, working remotely, so that you can look after yourselves really and make sure that you can be the best you can be. Agile Centre is the organisation that Karim and John McFadden and myself founded about 4 years ago. And what we do is build training capability in organisations, and we help coach and consult leaders and businesses in delivering agile transformation work. So a lot of our work has had to pivot into remote work these days, and we've actually been doing quite a lot of remote work with our partners and our clients for quite some time. So we wanted to take some of the learnings we have and explain a little bit about them as we go through. Any questions, don't forget to put them into the chat so we can catch up with them later. So ultimately, where's all this kind of new change come from? It's no surprise. The COVID-19 pandemic has sort of had a huge wide-reaching impact across the entire sort of working world, and has almost kind of forced a digital transformation across the globe, where everyone has to now currently work remotely, and where a lot of the problems were in place for organizations to trust their employees to be able to work remotely. It's almost been, their hand has been forced so that everyone has to now. And so I think there is a new world of work where there's a lot of people who aren't used to this kind of new way of working and are really kind of struggling on how to face into that and how to do these things really differently. The thing here is that this kind of huge event is potentially an extinction event for large corporates and large organizations who don't pivot and don't enable their organizations to be agile with the way of working. And so there's a huge drive for this, and the numbers are showing that this is the case. There's been a bit of a bounce back, but ultimately we need to be very conscious of this. Some of our clients are already talking about this some of our clients within government have said that 90% of the people who are working from home now will potentially not go back to work in the office. There's a whole heap of things moving towards this remote delivery because people are getting used to it. But it's not for everyone, and there's a bit of an angle to this I want to talk through. So before I carry on really on this one, I wanted to take you through what burnout actually is, and the differences between what burnout is and sort of stress really. And stress is often kind of coined as too much. You've got too much to do. You're working on too much. Too many things are happening. And burnout is actually there's too little. Actually, there's too little energy. There's the opposite of this. And actually, you go through a huge amount of stress curve before you burn out. And it's a case of looking out for what the signs of these things are. I personally have been through a number of these type of events, mainly when I was working about 8-9 years ago within the advertising industry and working all hours that God sends with clients and partners all over the world chasing the sun. So managing to fit 2 days into one worked for a little bit, but not for a long time. And when you kind of work consistently for long hours and you kind of constantly engage and hyper engaged, you end up kind of almost distancing yourself from the work you do. So I went through this kind of burnout thing here, and the way it's been described here is a way of explaining it quite clearly. So extinction of motivation or incentive, especially where one's devotion to a cause or relationship fails to produce the desired results. We're currently now feeling almost hyper engaged and hyper under the spotlight. I mean, literally, I am under a spotlight here because I've created an environment here for me to run these trainings and run these courses in a bit of a studio environment. And if you're you're not used to being involved in that, if you're even inside a conference room normally, and there's 10 people having a chat in that room, you're not always the focus of attention. And when you're actually in front of a camera, you're constantly the focus of attention, or you may feel that way. And because you're constantly there and you're constantly engaged with the camera, it can feel a bit, well, it engages this fight or flight response, and that can actually make you very on edge. And that can also create a very tired, exhausted kind of approach because you're constantly there. There's this whole other area as well where you feel that you might need to always be visible because you're always in the office, you're always at your desk, people can always see you. In the home office, you need to basically be constantly visible, constantly online, constantly in meetings to prove almost that you're working. And there's that trust issue that gets in the way. And if that stuff erodes, you can actually withdraw quite massively, really, because you can get very tired very quickly and you can get very cynical about the work you're doing. When I went through this kind of stress period, I was working with some very big global brands, and the work I was doing was really interesting, but it was exhausting. And so I was kind of like going through these stages where I got exhausted, cynical, and I'd also get through to a point where the work I was doing was not really exciting, was not really helpful. And so because of those things you've got to look out for, I was exhausted, I was cynical for the work I was doing, I wasn't very motivated for the work I was doing. I got really kind of, oh, there we go. Sorry, my presentation is catching up with me. I was actually getting quite tired and exhausted with this, and it distracts you very much. There's a thing called Zoom fatigue that's been coined by a number of different people, including the Harvard Business Review. And this is basically this idea that you're now constantly always connected at all times. And because you are, it's going to make a negative impact to the way that you're working and then impact to the way that you're kind of working in the day-to-day life. So one of the things I wanted to sort of talk through here is some key areas you could use to help improve the way that you work so that you can set yourself up for success. Because if you're feeling exhausted after a normal day's work, and if you're in front of a camera and you're trying to sort of balance the expectations of family, the expectations of working at home, the COVID-19 pandemic, everything that's happening all around you, you're going to get exhausted quite quickly, and the best people will burn out. Now, bearing in mind that a lot of the work we do in the Agile space is very creative knowledge work, it's problem-solving work by its own very nature in a complex space. You need the headspace to be able to do that. You need to have the thinking time, and you need to be able to look after yourself. So as long as your employer and your organization are trusting you to work from home, there are things you can put in place to help self-manage that and help make sure that you can get better use out of this. Hopefully you can all see me still and still keep going forward. So one of the things I wanted to sort of say is everyone talks about the pivot. Everyone's moving from pivoting into the pandemic, and actually most people have had to pivot from the office at work to the kitchen table. And I think part of that is a very difficult thing for a lot of organizations who have not had this opportunity to do this. As consultants and as coaches, often we're on client site, we're often all over the place, and we're actually working with people all over the world. So distributed working is not something that we're new to within Agile Center, but there's a lot of people who are new to this way of working. And so we wanted to bring some of these kind of insights into how you can set yourself up for success in these areas. The first thing here is setting up your space. I know it's hard because potentially you don't have a home office, you don't have a spare room necessarily, but ideally you want to find a quiet space that you can lock yourself away in for the duration of your calls and for the duration of the work that you're doing. And this allows you to enable for focus and enables these things to come into play. What this might mean is you might need to have a portable workstation. I know I've seen a few people with walking workstations that are basically tall stations. Karim himself works standing up at his laptop rather than at his desk, sat down. And I think there's a lot of these that can be folded away quite neatly and you can work over areas. He's stood up, and he's also very tall, so it makes the cupboards behind him look even smaller. So you can see there that there's a lot of ways you can do this, but you need to find a quiet space to begin with. And then you need to start thinking about how you're going to work in this environment. For me, I'm working at a desk. I have multiple screens around me so I can look at different things, but it's taken a while to get the setup in a good position, and you need to allow yourself time for that, really. Microphone and speakers or headset. A lot of people dialing in from home will put a headset on with a boom mic to try and get the best out of it, but that can be quite uncomfortable over time. I have a big boom mic on an extending arm above the laptop here, and that frees up my space. It frees up my ears and my face to basically be a bit more natural, but also because I'm on the screen all the time, it doesn't allow it to wear down and make me too hot and too uncomfortable. So find something that works for you. Some people find some headsets that work really well. I've got a very high quality camera on this, and hopefully that's coming across okay. You can see every lump and bump of my bald head. But I think investing in the technology is important. Often the cameras inside your laptops are not up to the job for high quality streaming. And I think the more you can connect with each other as a human and see each other very clearly, the easier it will be to continue that connection. Lighting is important. I haven't got the strip lights on in this office. I've got a softbox light box in front of me, but of course I've got a small office I can do this in. If you don't have those type of things, as you can see on screen here, this is like a little small softbox light. It's a flat LED screen that can really light up your face. And I think it's important investing in these things. These can be quite cheap from Amazon or from those kind of suppliers, 15, 20 quid to get yourself at least some decent lighting, because it's going to make you look more appealing on screen and not kind of washed out, etc. Play about with those settings. The internet connection is almost as important as all of that stuff. You can have a poor camera and poor connections or else, but internet connection, if you don't have that in place, it's going to be difficult. So I think you should always no, this remote working is going to be happening for quite some time. So now's the time to upgrade if you don't already have a decent internet connection. So I think you should always do a speed test to make sure that you can get a decent connection. 10 megabits per second is what we recommend for multiple screen working with video conferencing and all the rest of it. I think Netflix allows you to stream with only a 2 megabit upload, or download. So I think invest in that kind of upgrade if you can, because the infrastructure is as important as the tech setup. Multiple screens can help, but obviously only really with the way it works. You don't have to fork out with 3 or 4 screens. Work with something that's going to work for you. So I think getting your space set up is the first thing, and that's actually a screenshot there. That picture is actually John McFadden, one of our partners. That's his setup there. As you can see the couch in the background, but he's got his own workspace there, which is helping him work remotely while he's on the lockdown. The next thing is to stay engaged. I think what we often find when we're delivering training is that we have working agreements set in place for all of the participants. And part of that is about making sure that people are engaged at the right point at the right time. Now, during training, it's important, I suppose, to have a visible eyes to connect with people, to make sure people are off multitasking and looking at other stuff, but also you need to help break those barriers down. So keeping the camera on is important during those kind of meetings, but you don't have to be always on. You can look for permission to turn this off. And during our breaks, we put regular breaks in all of our work that we do, and we ensure that people can turn the camera off. They can turn the camera off, put themselves on mute, go and get a coffee. It's important to do these type of things. Microphone always muted. On a webinar like this, I have a sea of red microphones with a line through them, which is fine because obviously it's a webinar. But in a meeting room, are we always muted? Are we just waiting for the end of the call and then sort of tapping in as a standard conference call? Yeah, thanks very much, guys. See you later. Let's make sure that we're engaged in the work we do and make sure that we're always making sure there's regular temperature checks. So temperature checks are something that we use within our courses and with our coaching and our kind of group consultancy work, where we ask the room, and in this instance, the virtual room, if everyone's okay. Thumbs up if you're okay, kind of thumbs down if you're not, fist of 5 if you're okay, how you're feeling. Temperature checks throughout the day and throughout the course of a call or course of video conferencing can be really helpful for you as a facilitator, but also as an attendee. There's no reason why you couldn't say, okay, guys, do we think we're off topic here? Is everyone feeling okay? Do we need a break? Be a bit more courageous in that space so that you're able to do that. And being present is important. Everyone thinks that they can multitask, but they can't. We have a screen over here looking at this. We have a webcam looking at me over here. I've got my laptop down here with my emails. Maybe I can just drop in a quick note into Slack, and maybe I can just pop over here and send that quick email while that guy's rabbiting on. Well, actually, if you're not present, you're not really getting the value out of it. So why be there? And I think the important thing is to make sure that you're valuing your own time as much as anything else. Prepare for your day. Dress as you'd like to be seen is important. Everyone is wearing shorts and probably Crocs, but at least the top off you should be presentable. Make sure that you're dressed as you'd like to be seen in your working environment. Of course, context is key for your particular workplace. Create a daily backlog of work, whether that's physical post-it notes and stickies that you can burn up and chuck in the bin, or whether it's something that's on a Trello board or on Monday. Keep yourself focused on the work that you need to do for that day. Managing family expectations is important as well. You know, if you've got childcare to look after, you've got people to manage, put that time in your diary and make sure that you're allowing yourself to be available, or enabling the family to understand where you are and what you're up to, because it allows them to plan their day as well. And also sync with your own team. Make sure there's that regular checkpoint. If you're using Agile and Scrum methodologies, you could be looking at checkpoints in the morning. You can do a daily stand-up or a daily sit-down if you like. But a checkpoint, I think, with the team to help make sure there's a human connection with the work and you don't feel so isolated is a really important part of it. So put these things there, get yourself ready for the day as if you were going to work, and make sure you're kind of set up for success in that way. Manage your time. On my screen, on my left-hand side screen, I've got a thing here, this time timer application, which we've got physical versions of this as well, but you can use your stopwatch on your iPhone, etc. But I think the important thing here is to create time boxes which enable you to focus on smaller items that enable you to get through your day. Block your calendar out for breaks. It's something that people don't do. And so if your calendar is wide open for meetings, they'll get filled relatively quickly. And you go from Zoom call to Zoom call to Zoom call, and you'll get exhausted without actually getting much done. So it's important to make sure you're aware of that. So blocking out time in your diary at 10:15, 5-minute break, at 12 o'clock, here's a 45-minute break, those kind of things can be very helpful. What we've found in our training of delivery is that we've, every 45 to 50 minutes, we put in about a 7-minute break, and that kind of works quite well. It's enough time for people to get a coffee and a stretch, but it's not enough time for them to get completely lost down the wormhole of YouTube and disappear off the call. So that 7-minute time or 45-minute gives them also a bit of time to assimilate what's been going on and how things have been going. So that really helps with that. So block out your time for small breaks throughout the day, because you're naturally going to do that when you're actually in the office. And if you've got a feeling like you've got to be constantly connected and hyper aware and hyper connected to the work, then actually you may not get that thinking time. You may not get that time to yourself that you need, that you'd normally get at the water cooler or you get at the coffee machine. Try not to multitask, focus in your energy. There are many apps and methods to do this. Pomodoro is a good little method for this. Put a 30-minute time box, work for 25 of those minutes and give yourself a 5-minute break. It gives you those kind of small chunks. It allows you to get through the day. And if the work is too big, slice it up into smaller parts. You can at least get through and see success. I put in here, automate where possible. For getting people into my diary and to manage meetings in and out of the calendar, I've used an application called Calendly, and it connects Zoom and my Google Calendar together. So if somebody finds a spot in my diary, they can book in meetings and they can just drop it. It automatically drops the Zoom meeting in, automatically creates the invite. And it means I don't have to play that PA job of managing the time that I have, and actually it just appears. So it's really helpful to automate where you can. And on top of that, a really helpful feature of Calendly is that you can actually put buffers either side of your meetings. So it can automatically take out more time and put a buffer either side. In Outlook and in similar kind of applications, you can use things like travel time to do that. So always make sure you've got time in between your meetings so that you always have a bit of time to stretch and to move around, or else you'll get an 8-hour Zoom day and they are never, never fun. So managing your time is key. Don't forget to get familiar with the tools. There are many, many tools out there, and there are also many resources to get used to these things as well. So what I would suggest is get used to how to work with Zoom. They've got plenty of utilities and videos online ready for this. Google Docs is a really great collaborative working tool. We use Mural for our online training, and it allows you to sort of collaborate all at the same time on a particular task. Miro is another very similar tool. You've obviously on Zoom at the moment, you've got Microsoft Teams is coming up as well. And a lot of these are all now competing in the same space to try and make the most for the customers at the end. So you may find that one client of yours is using Teams and others using Zoom. So always make sure to hone that kind of axe and get up to speed with how the tools can work so that you can get used to that and you're not spending the first half an hour of your day trying to get connected, waving at people and asking if they can hear you. So try and make sure that that stuff's in place so that actually removes that layer of stress away from you as you get on. And take care of yourself is the key thing here. Make sure you stay hydrated. coffee is always good, but make sure you get plenty of water. This is important. If you're in front of this, your machine is your brain working overtime. It's your higher brain is engaged a lot of the time when you're in front of the camera and you're working on these kind of creative things. You're going to get tired. It uses a huge amount of energy from your body. And even though you're not working around, you'll get exhausted by not doing that. So keep hydrated. Make sure you stretch regularly to make sure you don't get any back problems and you can actually get a bit more energy from this. And don't forget, you can say no. You don't always have to accept every single meeting. If a meeting can be an email, if it can be a Slack message, why not? You know, I mean, it's important to stay connected, but it's also important to make sure it's at the right level of fidelity and the right level of horizon. You might find that a collaborative working document is better than a Zoom call where everyone just listens to a bald man in a blue shirt talking at them. So there's all that. You can say no. It's important. Be present, but not hyper connected. In this world where we're always online and we always have everything connected to us, make sure that you're still present. If you're hyper connected at all times, you're looking at Slack all the time, looking at email all the time, that's exhausting. It takes cognitive overhead. It takes a huge amount away from you. So make sure that you're not getting that death by 1,000 cuts by constantly getting distracted by different things. And keep focused, keep present, and actually you'll find you'll feel better because you're actually getting through a lot more in your day. Don't forget to ask for help. There will be help in your organization. There are helps in the community. There is webinars like this. There are individuals like Karim and myself who can help you with this. So do get in touch. Do reach out if you need support. It's important to do that. And obviously, I keep on mentioning it, but take regular breaks because people don't. And if you don't take the breaks, you'll get exhausted before you know it, and your week will run away with you. So there's some high-level hints and tips that we can go through. On reflection, I think there's going to be a new normal, as everyone calls it. I think there's going to be an important kind of thing. Stress can lead to huge amounts of burnout. Stress comes in many forms. It could be the working environment you're in. It can be the time management. It can be the expectation that you're being set upon. It can be the way of working. And I think you need to give yourself that time to learn these new techniques to ensure that you can. Or else the stress will be like a swan on a lake where it's smooth along the bottom, but the legs are flapping around too much until you run out of energy. So I think the new normal is not going to be going away soon. And this might be an uncomfortable time, but actually it's a great time to relearn what you could be doing differently. Now, on my time box, literally just ended right there. So I'm going to finish on a single slide before Karim can join in, because I do tend to carry on a lot if I'm not kept to my time boxes. Agile Centre have partnered with Oliver Bernard to offer you guys a discount on any of our online training. We do live online training, and we also do in-person training, but that seems to have been delayed for quite some time. So in the meantime, all of our certified courses are now able to be delivered online. We do it through various collaboration tools. It still allows you to have an interactive experience. It still allows you to have the smaller conversations in breakout rooms. And I'm sure that you'll enjoy the work that we do. We'll be able to send this code on afterwards. All of our courses across all of our website is able to be booked online. It's a secure website and you have a 10% discount code courtesy of Oliver Bernard on this one. That's my time. Alex, I think I'm done just about.
Perfect. John, that was great. I think all of us on this call can take a lot from that. Really appreciate it. Just to let everyone know that I will be emailing the Agile London group on Meetup with the link to Agile Centre website and again, just reminding you all of the code for that 10% discount. So thanks very much for that offer, John. Hopefully some people take you up on it.
Yeah,
Karim, over to you. Do you want to just do a quick sound and tech check if you're sharing any visuals?
Sure. Firstly, can you hear me, everyone? Are we good on the sound? Good.
Audio's good.
All right. I will share some visuals. Yeah, let me just share that. See, the joy of having another screen over there is I can see what you're seeing, so I know that worked. Another little tip. If you do have to. So yeah, I think we're good to go. Let's set my time box up. All right, well, thanks for that, John. That was very cool. I don't do as many of those things as I should have. So that's me on the days when I don't have my camera turned on. No, I'm just kidding. Let me take you back to a time where 2-ton wombats roamed across the Australian outback. We had woolly mammoths and saber-toothed cats crossing and owning various continents. Go back even further, we had giant dinosaurs that were the kings and queens of their domains. All right. Now, over the years, evolution has a tendency to favor the bigger creatures. So we evolve to get bigger and bigger and bigger because, well, if you think back 4 million years ago, our ancestors were 4 foot tall. Most of us, except one of our business partners, most of us are bigger than that now, right? So over the years, we do evolve to be bigger. Why is that? Well, a number of reasons. One, bigger creatures can fend off predators more easily. They can catch prey more easily. They can find food more easily. They can cover larger areas of ground to survive more easily. So there's an evolutionary advantage to that size and that scale. Now, I can almost hear you asking, well, if that's the case, where are all these creatures now? Because there's no woolly mammoth. There's no 2-ton wombat in Australia. I wish there were, but there isn't. So where are these creatures? Well, it seems that nature, being nature, has a counterbalance. And that counterbalance is extinction events, right? 66 million years ago, a meteor the size of a mountain slammed into somewhere around the Gulf of Mexico, as far as we can tell, right? And that's known as the Cretaceous Paleogene extinction event. 3/4 of life on Earth was wiped out. I mean, animal life, plant life, just wiped out, like in a few short weeks, gone. Now the ones that survived that, they weren't the big, lumbering, woolly mammoths, right? They were the small, cat size and below, small birds, small rodents. They were the ones that survived. Now, why did they survive? Because they could adapt more quickly. They could breed and reproduce more quickly, and they could find shelter, find food, and they could adapt to the new normal, the new climate that had emerged after this Cretaceous Paleogene extinction event. So when it comes to evolution, nature favors the bigger. But when it comes to surviving extinction events, nature favors the smaller. It's quite clever like that, all right? It's worked in a counterbalance. So what has that got to do with anything, you might say, all right? Now, this talk is about business agility, okay? And we're going to talk about why that matters and what our business extinction event is and how we can survive and not be like the woolly mammoth. So I'm going to introduce a few concepts, very, very high level, right? At the highest level, organizations they are undertaking 2 different kinds of activity. What I call is exploiting and exploring. All right. So what's the difference? Exploiting is taking what you have, your current services, business models, products, and it's making as much money as you can from those. Organizations are great at doing this, right? We have this product, we're going to make it a little bit better, we're going to be more efficient, create it a little bit cheaper, try and incrementally increase our margins, right? Reduce costs, right? We're good at planning, things are known, things are predictable, things are understood. That's the exploit side of the organization. The explore side, and organizations do this at varying degrees, the explore side is different. The explore side says, well, we better find the next thing because that product's not going to last forever. So there's a whole bunch of people doing stuff to create the new products, the new services, the new business models, right? To innovate, right? And that's largely what organizations do. Some do almost exclusively one, and some do, you can't almost exclusively just explore, but some are far better at one than the other. Some are very, very good at both. And we'll talk about that, okay? Now, this is important. Let me take you back to the 20th century, which is a different world ago. Back then, how you won was through being efficient and being effective as exploiting. Here's a small example. This is 1913, and Henry Ford introduces his moving production line. Innovation, right? Before, many, many people had to move around and come to the cars, but now the cars came to them, right? This innovation meant that they could produce their car, their product that they had, their known product that they were exploiting, the Model T, for nearly 20 years, right? They could produce it not in 12 hours, which was what they were currently doing, but they could produce one in 90 minutes, which means they could sell it not at $850. And bear in mind, this is 1913, so that was a lot of money then. It's still a lot of money now, right? But they could sell it for $300, right? No one can compete with that, right? So their ability to exploit what they had, do what they were currently doing more effectively, more efficiently, meant that they blew up into a giant organization, right? And by 1927, 1 in every 2 cars sold was a Model T. That's crazy. They went from just another car company to we are the biggest car company on the planet. All right. So why is this important to us? All right. Because that was then, and that was how you was successful in the 20th century. As a time that was marked by stability, the ability to do the same thing over and over again and be successful, like Ford did with the Model T. But then this happened. VUCA, if you've heard that term, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, started being used in the 90s at the US Military College, is now used with respect to business. Okay, what is this? Right? Volatility is the pace of change. Like the world changes like we've never seen before. We're going to see some stats in a minute. Right? The pace of change and the scale of change, right, is like nothing we've ever seen before. Okay, even compared to the Industrial Revolution. Uncertainty is our inability to make predictions. Right? We can't know things, right? Because everything's too complex, too many moving parts. We're living this right now, right? Too much uncertainty to make predictions about the next 12 months, never mind the next 6 months. Henry Ford could plan for the next 5 years. We can't do that now. So we need a different approach. Again, complexity, too many moving, interconnected parts. It's not just about breaking things down, optimizing and putting them back together, because it's the interaction between things, between different companies, different suppliers, between our customers and our competitors. And we can't know the things we need to know in order to build products, that we've got to experiment. And the ambiguity, like that's not a lack of information, that's having so much information that there are multiple different interpretations on that, and we don't know which one's right. Okay, so VUCA has changed the game. It's no longer enough to do well what you've always done. Now, I'll get some stats for you here, right? The years to reach 25% of the US population, right? You can see it took 46 years for electricity, smartphones in 4, right? Everything's accelerating. The years to reach $1 billion market cap, become a unicorn, again, took Google 8 years. There, slow coaches, right? Now you see organizations that are doing this in under 12 months, right? Everything is accelerated. What that means for us is that just because our competitors don't look like they're going to eat our lunch, that doesn't mean there's not someone in a garage somewhere starting an organization with a disruptive product, service, business model, or technology that isn't going to destroy our whole business model. This VUCA is the equivalent of that Cretaceous Paleogene extinction event that wiped out the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. It's changed the game. It's no longer enough to be big and efficient and bigger and bigger and bigger. In business, that used to give you a competitive advantage. It was survival of the biggest and most efficient, like the Fords of the world, like the US Steels of the world that became the first $1 billion market capitalization company in 1901, right? But you don't get marks for that now. You get marks for being nimble, like those small rodents that survived. You get marks for being able to adapt, to be able to respond, to be able to innovate. And that has nothing to do with size. So what you're seeing is the big traditional lumbering organizations dying out like those woolly mammoths because of this, right? So how do we create nimble organizations? And that's what business agility is about. Unfortunately, for most organizations, we understand how to exploit. You can learn that on your MBA. Every manager in the world knows how to do this really well, all right? What they don't know how to do is this, because for this, you need whole new cultures, whole new management styles. You need whole new processes, whole new structures. None of the rules that work on the left work on the right now, which kind of sucks if you're the big organization that's made a ton of money from exploiting. And now suddenly you need to explore and you don't know how to do it and you're not built to do it. And that's why these organizations are disappearing. Look at this. This is how long organizations survive. It's going down and down and down. These are how many of the Fortune 500 companies from the 1955 original list still exist. Actually, it's 59 now, right? So we won't, like, there will be none left on this soon, okay? These big organizations are dying just like the dinosaurs did because they're not nimble enough. And business agility is the solution to that, all right? You don't need to hear about these organizations. Couldn't adapt their business models. Kodak even invents digital photography, but it just didn't know what to do with it. In fact, it tried to hide it. And how did that go for you? All right. The various Fujifilm is thriving because it pivoted into a whole bunch of other things, including flat screen TVs and cosmetics, believe it or not. Because apparently keeping keeping photos from aging and keeping faces from aging have a lot in common. It's all about collagen, I hear. So this is what leaders say. Teams, you need to be more agile, go and do that. Here's a Scrum course. Nothing against Scrum courses, I teach them, they're very good, right? But on their own, they're pointless. Because this is what the teams are saying. They're saying, you're kind of in our way, maybe you should get out of the way and allow us to be more agile, okay? And this is why most organizations struggle, they're not set up for it. So I want to show you a model I created that helps organizations to achieve business agility because they need it, they all know they need it, and very few know how to do it. Right? And so they focus on this. Let's do an agile transformation. As I said, let's focus on the teams, let's focus on ways of working, processes, practices, frameworks, Scrum, Kanban, Jira, yeah. And it doesn't work, and it will never work because it's one piece of the puzzle and it's a small piece. Here's what they're not focusing on. These are the 6 enablers of business agility, right? And largely, 5 of them get ignored. Now, you're not going to succeed if you ignore 5 out of 6 things. Leaders don't change the way they show up, right? If you don't change the way you show up as a leader and move from a command and control expert leader to an enabling, supportive leader, an agile leader who pushes authority down to where the information is, who grows the capability around them, and who creates the culture and structures, that's not going to work because your competitors are doing that. The effective ones are, at least. Right? The organizational culture, #1 barrier to agility every single year. The 20th, I believe, State of Agile reports out, and shock horror, yet again, the #1 barrier to agility, organizational culture. Every single year, I think. I've never seen it not be the case. But yet, how many organizations address their culture? Why? Their culture is set up for exploiting, not for exploring, and they don't know how to change that, or even that they have to. Organizational structures, silos. I'm in the test team. What is a test team, right? That's not a thing, because actually that's a group of individuals who do the same job. That's not a team. Could you imagine the goalie team, right? And they're not going to win any games, all right? Premiership starts tonight. I shouldn't have told you that because the games are on. They start after this meetup. All right, structures, organizational structures. If you're siloed by function and you can't collaborate, that's not going to work. The most effective organizations are networks of cross-functional autonomous teams. How do you go from A to B, right? And who's focusing on reinventing HR, moving it away from this compliance-based HR models of annual performance reviews and managing for compliance and obedience, and saying, how do we manage for engagement? How do we unleash people's creativity, their passion, their initiative? Because this is the secret sauce. All of these organizations that are doing great things, that are innovating, aren't doing it because of their bureaucracy. They're doing it because they have great people and they inspire them and they empower them and they get out of the way. And finally, governance and funding. Our governance models are broken. Why? Because they assume everything is knowable and predictable. Where's the business case? Where's the scope signed off? What am I going to get? When am I going to get it? What's the timeline? There you go. It will go to your investment committee and your project will get signed off. That's not how it works. Innovation is about running many, many experiments, killing the ones early that fail, investing and doubling down in the ones that are successful. If you don't reinvent governance to be more adaptive, more experimental, it's over before you even start. In the Business Agility Institute's latest report, that's the #1 indicator of success in an agility transformation. Did you reinvent your governance model? Is finance on board, right? Closely followed by is HR on board. Not did you go on the good Scrum class, all right? Scrum classes are good. Now, so this is the model, all right? 6 enablers, largely we ignore 5 of them, okay? So this is something I created and you can download this. It's called the Business Agility Canvas. It's free. There's a 20-page guidebook, which is also free. You can download it on agilecenter.com or just Google the Business Agility Canvas. And this is a way of visualizing your transformation. What's the vision? What are the values? What is success criteria? What changes are we going to make in all 6 of those enablers of business agility? What are our key risks, stakeholders, obstacles? Let's get that out there, because if one of these boxes is empty, we know we're in trouble. We know if governance and funding has a big fat nothing in there, then we're going to fail. And so we need to have that transparency in those difficult conversations early. So the very first thing you should do will be leadership education as to why they need business agility. They probably already know that if they hired me or anyone, right? And what that means for them, And this is one way you can get alignment on some coherent, coordinated actions to move you towards those goals. Otherwise, it's, yeah, I've got a bunch of agile coaches. They're going to go and do some coaching, right? Not going to work, all right? So this is a tool that is very useful. Like I said, it's free. Go and download that if that's of interest. That's all I can say. This is a topic I spend days and days and days talking about, right? But given where we are, I don't want to go into too much depth on all of those things, other than to say that business agility is absolutely vital, right? That's how you survive and thrive, right? In order to get there, you need a coherent approach which covers all of the whole organization. You can't just change IT or the teams, all right? Now, this stuff is important. And if anyone out there shares the same passion as me on this, if anyone shares the same urgency as me on this, if anyone shares the same hopefulness, right, that organizations can be reinvented, I genuinely believe that out of this crisis will emerge a new type of organization, the type of organization that is more adaptive, more innovative, and more engaging to work in, that is going to create more value for their customers. That's the stuff that gets me out of bed. I love doing that stuff. I'm going to keep doing that stuff, whether 99% of people ignore me or not, because I think it's a message people need to hear. All right. I have a ton more information and details on this, which you can grab if you reach out to me. As John said, I won't do all that stuff he said. We do a bunch of training. The course that I run that covers that stuff is the Certified Agile Leadership course. That's the leadership-focused business agility course, and it's based around the 6 enablers of business agility. I'll also send out an overview that I did on YouTube, and I will talk through that stuff. All right, but this is the stuff that's impactful. I do also run Scrum classes as well after I've spent the last 20 minutes telling you they're worthless. They're not. They're very good, and you should go on one. Just go on the leadership class first, because that's going to create the environment. All right, all those other 5 things create the underlying organizational operating system. The practices and processes and tools, they are the individual apps you install on top of that operating system. If you don't have the operating system working, you're finished. All right, that was a massive whistle-stop tour, and I tried to stay inside my time box, and that might be a first, because I think I did, with 2 minutes to spare. But please ask me more questions on that, because I could talk all night, but I know you won't want me to, because the football's on. So that is all from me. Thank you, folks. Please reach out if you need more information on that.
Karim, thank you very much. Fantastic talk, really engaging. And you're always, both you and John are always welcome back to speak further if you wish. Hopefully my internet connection is a little better. I've moved locations in my house, taking John's recommendation and advice. I've actually recently upgraded my internet, but seems to still be having some trouble. Anyway, some questions have come in. John, I'll go to you first, as Karim has just spoken. How do you feel, or do you feel, learning may suffer with less human interaction post-COVID?
It's an interesting question. So I think that it's those things that I talked about with making the human connection, although we're not with each other in the room, I think we need to almost compensate for that and be aware of that on the way in, really. So we've worked with teams in the past where they've been completely remote, but they haven't never actually connected to each other and seen each other's face, actually spoke to each other, got the tacit body language in place or anything like that. So they've all been basically on conference calls without any video conferencing at all. And we found that was a massive disabler for them to actually work well together. So I think that it will be an impact to the training, but you have to re-energize the way that you do the training. So you still need to have interactivity. You still need to have those engaging kind of conversations. Those training from the back of the room type approaches are still relevant. It's just that you need to use the technology and leverage that for your benefit, really. So collaborative online working tools will help that. It doesn't get away from the fact that actually people will still learn better potentially in the classroom. It all depends on the learning type of the individual, really. But what we try to do is put in place things which will enable that to happen. So video conferencing, decent equipment, internet connectivity, all these things will help. And that will enable people to still learn and share. What we do seem to find as well is that in a large group setting like this, if we had a class running with this amount of people, and we were just talking at them and doing kind of exercises, people would disengage relatively quickly. And so what we do is we create smaller groups or breakout rooms. You've probably been in a breakout room at some point on your Zoom experience so far. But actually one of the things here is that if you go into a breakout room, it's the same as having a mini table. Now that actually takes down a lot of the barriers that people are worried about, because you're having a conversation with 3 or 4 people rather than waiting for the person with a loud mouth to stop talking in a group of 25 people. And so you have to engineer and build that training to support this new way of working, because it doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. One of the benefits of we love our data, we look at all our feedback, and we take retrospective on pretty much everything that we do. And what we found is that we've managed to iterate and inspect and adapt our way of working with our training already. And so that we're now getting the same type of NPS scores for our trainings that we've been delivering remotely as we have been when it's in person. And I think those changes are really important. So welcome change, get a thick skin for the feedback, and really enable that technology, because that's the thing that's going to help, I think.
Thanks, John. So one's come in for you both. So Karim, I'll go to you first, and then John, you pick straight up after that.
Cool.
I've found it works quite well if we also time box the answers that are given when questions are asked to you both, because obviously there's 2 people giving an answer. So try and keep your answers to 60 seconds when questions are asked to you both. So to Karim first, how do you feel COVID will change agility within organisations? Quite a broad question, but how do you think COVID will change agility within organisations?
I think in 2 ways, right? The first one, and John's largely covered, so I won't cover again, is the way we work as teams, right? It's going to become a lot harder for us to create the kind of connections that we know are so valuable on teams, right? The interactions, the water cooler moments where you look into the whites of someone's eyes, you find out whether their kid got into the school they wanted, where you really build that trust and that psychological safety. That's just harder now, right? And it is what it is. We have to be creative about how we do that. But taking that aside, I think what organizations are realizing now is even more, this is another extinction event, right? This is, can you pivot quickly enough to survive, or are you going to go the way of the dinosaur? So yet again, they've been reminded that to survive and thrive today is not about how efficient you are, it's about how adaptive you are, how responsive you are to a world you absolutely cannot predict. No one called this 4 months ago, 5 months ago, right? But here we are, and we need to respond to it. And if you're not set up to respond to it, it's going to be so hard. So the question is, how do we redesign our organizations to respond to whatever challenge comes over the hill, because we can't see over the hill now. And I think that's going to be the biggest change. People finally get it. They get the need for it. John.
Yeah, so I think just to echo some of those things, that organizations need to change to be more adaptive. They need to welcome change, I think, on the way in, which is really important, because actually the risk aversion is something that's going to kill them, really. And to be nimble and small is really important for your teams and the products you deliver incrementally. But I think if you look at the human side as well of this, the humans involved in this need to make sure that they're looking after themselves and they have the enablement around them to support it. It's not just the organization, the culture and everything that supports that will make sure that they can get better. So some of those 6 enablers that we talked about, that leadership, leading from the front, I think there's a tendency to move into micromanagement, there's a tendency to move into getting the people to be hyper visible and hyper connected to the work that they're doing, and actually not giving them the freedom to be creative and show that there is value. So if we look at what's driving the individuals and look after the humans involved, we'll see that actually the bigger value will come from this. So I think there will be a huge change, and I'm welcoming that change. It's scary for a lot of people, and I think it's going to be a really interesting time. The new normal will be adapting to change, and I think that's going to be the defining thing from this pandemic. Thank you.
You both sort of just touched on it a little bit there, but another question to you both. So Karim, I'll go to you first, as John's just answered. What challenges do you feel companies now face with culture as working from home as more working from home is being offered? I can certainly speak on behalf of Oliver Bernard. It's something we're quite concerned about. You know, we try and hire and encourage high levels of self-motivation, and you know, it's great when we're in the office and we're all together working collaboratively and seeing each other do well and perform well. So how the question has come in that how do you feel, or what challenges do you feel that companies now face in trying to maintain culture or build a culture when so many are working from home?
Yeah, Again, I kind of touched on some of the things, right? But when you look at great cultures, what the word that comes across is most often is family, right? When really great cultures and teams, people feel like it's not actual family, but it's close. The belonging cues, right? We are, like, you go back to our evolution, right? We're tribal creatures. We lived in small bands of up to about 50, right? But and not being part of that tribe, not being part of that band meant you probably don't survive, right? Because we're hunter-gatherers, foragers, and being excluded is a real survival threat. That's why we treat being excluded now, like, we get so stressed about it. Like, no one's going to die if someone's not your friend, but our brain doesn't know that because it can't distinguish. And so how do we create that culture? Well, the same way we've created that culture and those belonging cues for about the 200,000 years that we've been on this earth in our current form, and that is through physical contact, face-to-face communication, eye contact, lots of short interactions, humor, I mean, and this is a barrier to all of those things, right? As amazing as it is, we can still collaborate from our homes, right? It's a barrier to human connection. And so how do you build the culture? We've got a lot of working out to do as to how you recreate that stuff in a way our brains aren't wired for. So I say that's the first thing, right? I largely cover that. The second thing is there needs to be a huge shift from a theory X mentality of everyone's out to screw the organization and do no work and steal, and they need to be monitored, to a theory Y perspective of, if we create the environment, people will work hard and they'll do good things. And we need to trust people to work, because there's a trust element for people working at home, right? I can't see what people are doing all day. No one can see what I'm doing. Well, actually, people can because I'm training, right? But mostly you can't see that. And so there needs to be a huge shift away from this theory X perspective to a one of trust and empowerment. And I think it's going to become a lot harder to micromanage people, right? Which I guess is one of the good things that comes out of this, because we don't want to be micromanaged. But I'd say get people together where you can. Don't just never do that, right? We still need to get together to build those connections. Otherwise, we're a collection of individuals, not teams. John, I'll let you dive in here.
Sure. So I think, it's really interesting, again, from the sort of theory X, theory Y perspective. I think there's a really interesting element as well of, from the individuals, how do we help change culture? Well, we don't change culture in an organization by stripping the floors and putting a barista bar in and bring your dog to work on Friday. You change it by behavioral changes from the organization. So those behavioral changes can be from leadership, which will be enabling trust. And also, if you want to try and maintain those connections, make sure that there is that non-work related kind of work. I mean, if you're inside a group of, and you're in a small group with about 8 or 10 people working with each other, there's that, you get the benefit of eavesdropping, you get the benefit of banter, you get the benefit of jokes and inside things. Don't make it all just about the work. Allow for that human connection, so you can have those happy hours at the end of the day where everyone's on Zoom on a happy hour. I mean, again, the social distancing is starting to get lifted a little. You can still meet within 2 meter distances from each other, still try and get the human connection going. But I think when you're looking at working and you're in the technology space and you've got to keep the distance and you might be working from home, and ensure that you're connecting as regularly as you can, ensure that you're retrospecting on that and inspecting and adapting as a team to ensure that you're getting the best out of that. So I think it is going to be hard. We are going to have to work on that, but that's fine because we're set up for change. We'll inspect and adapt and we'll get better at this. And I think the idea is to not be afraid of that change, but it will come from a seed change of leadership and culture shift from the organizations to move away from that micromanagement and distrust, and move towards empowerment and engagement for the people that work for them.
Thank you. John, another question for you.
Sure.
How do you feel learning might suffer with less human interaction post-COVID?
How it might suffer with less human interaction. I think so it can be difficult because of different people learn it different ways. Some people are very sort of auditory learners, some people are learners through reading, but a lot of the work that we do focuses on the interaction and the bit in between those gaps as well. So enabling asynchronous learning as well as in person, albeit remote. I think the idea is you have to design something that enables that training and learning to evolve. Remote learning has been going for quite some time. It's just not the first time people have been remote learning. There is online education platforms that have been working worldwide for quite some time. And in fact, the overall education system in the UK has moved towards that online learning and shared classrooms using tools like Zoom and MS Teams, etc. I think where it'll suffer is that if people do not put the time in to try and change the way that they deliver the training to enable that technology to work as hard as it can be. So for example, a 1 hour, 2 hour stint of a trainer talking at a room of people won't work anymore. And I think what you need to look at, and I think it never really worked very well, that sage on a stage approach, and we wouldn't do that in a training. And what I'd say is that making sure there's regular breaks, making sure that you train your trainers and facilitators and you coach them in a way that enables that to be cognizant, that the way that they've got to deliver has to be different. That they've got to set themselves up for success in this way, and they can't just take the old deck that they used, paste it into Zoom and start delivering it. They have to fundamentally go back to brass tacks, and that's what we've done with ours. And it was a lot of work for all of our courses we've done, but actually we're finding the benefits are happening. And actually, Karim's probably on version 95 of his CSM or 96 of it, probably. And I think a lot of those versions have been actually relatively recent because we're iterating through the simulations to enable that shared learning and interaction to still take place, but actually not with the technology trying to get in the way of it. So I think it will be impaired if you don't sort of face into the changes as trainers and as learners yourself.
Thank you. So another sort of statement followed by a question has come in. It's been reinforced, the belief in the Agile principle of the most efficient and effective method of conveying information to and within a development team is face-to-face conversation. I'd be interested to hear from both speakers on any tips on how to help management/leadership understand that teams who are used to being co-located may not be able to deliver what they previously were capable of during this period. What are both of your thoughts?
It's okay. You
go. I have thoughts all day long on this because I'm a big advocate of co-location, and I always have been and I still am, but we are where we are, right? We need to understand the power of this. Every single study shows that people who sit together are more effective. They deliver in about a third of the time. Right? This goes back to the Allen curve, right? When this research was being done on organizations that were effective at delivering products, and he did that in the 70s. Someone called Ben Weber has reproduced that, and what they've shown is the closer you sit to someone, the more likely you are to communicate with them digitally. Right, so when people are close, they're more likely to chat on Zoom and they're more likely to chat on Slack. And actually, there's still that curve that the further you are away, the less interaction there is. The less interaction there is, the less effective you are with this complex kind of work. So there's data out there, right? Look at the Allen curve. Look at what Ben Weber's done in Harvard Business Review, reinforcing that. Look at how organizations like Pixar and Apple and Google design their organizations for maximum collisions, right? All the data's there. The question is, how do we do that now? And because I just don't know, but there's going to have to be some better tools than this. There's just going to have to be, and maybe this forces the hands of organizations who haven't built these tools yet. Maybe artificial reality becomes a thing. We all have a headset on and it feels like we're sat around the table. It's the best we're going to do. But I mean, if you care to look at the data, it's there. It is easy to find. How you convince managers of that when actually they're probably a cost center and they're looking at costs rather than effectiveness. That's the problem, right? If you're a cost center, you're managed on cost, not the value you deliver. In which case, those decisions are just like outsourcing, right? You outsource to the cheap companies because, hey, they're cheap. But what's the cost of that? And I'll be honest with you, it's not a battle I win very often. So maybe you don't want my answer on this because it still happens. John, maybe you have more success than me.
Yeah, well, I think the data is true. I mean, it is out there. They've done some studies out there. The Journal of Experimental Social Psychology did a review back in 2017, I think it was, where they sent, there was a group of people and they sent half the group of people the same request in email and the other half of people the same request, but in a face-to-face communication. They talked to each other, exactly the same words, 34 times more positive response to the face-to-face communication because they could pick up the non-verbal cues, they could pick up the sense of the body language, they could pick up a lot of different things, the intonation in the voice. If you're in a bit of an annoyed mood and you read an email, you'll read it in the voice that you've got in your head, and actually that could actually spin things out. So if you've got an email or a text message or a Slack message and you're not in a good place, or the relationship's not in a great place, where actually it could be dealt with very quickly with the same message, you could say, that's a great topic you have on there in person or on video camera, but on an email it can be read in a different way. And I think you miss the non-verbals there. So I think, although we're always going to say that the face-to-face communication is key, I think we leverage the technology that we have to enable that to be as best as it can be. And then maybe the things like Magic Leap will force forward, right? They're doing some huge amounts of experience stuff with augmented reality. Oculus Rift is a unicorn that kind of went to 1 billion market capitalization in 14 months. I think there's a huge amount of technology out there. And what we're seeing actually in the tools we're using for this level of collaboration, Miro, Mural, Zoom, they're rolling out changes extremely rapidly, a lot quicker than they've ever done before. Even Microsoft Teams is now starting to catch up, and Microsoft are notorious for being behind the curve. So I think there's a huge thing there that actually, that if innovation and we move into that explore cycle outside of the exploit cycle, then actually we might see that a lot of this stuff will move forward a lot better. We'd always advocate face-to-face, and that's why we'd say get the video cameras on and at least talk to each other as humans.
That's it. That's it. Do this rather than Slack. And that's all. Right now, we've lost this battle. We lost it even before COVID, right? We just had, right? So we can communicate it for sure. But the fact is that organizations are going this way. They're now definitely going this way. So given where we are, how do we do it best? Right? Can we jump on actual video calls more and do less email and less Slack? Because even even John and I, we're a small company. When it's Slack, it always goes wrong. It's always a bit of narc in there when it's on Slack. When we jump on a call, we have a great time. Just it happens, right? So try and make the best of it, and hopefully the tools catch up.
Thank you very much. Final question. Again, I'll put it to you both. Happy hour has been mentioned on this call.
Yeah.
Often people do have an unhappy hour. How best can they manage their unhappiness in the virtual world?
I'll pick that up because I've been talking a bit about the burnout side of things, at least. Now, I think with unhappiness, it's really difficult. I'm not professing to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist for that matter, but I think that when people are feeling that they're down and low, reaching out to people can be actually extremely hard. And what you might find is that you might want to connect as a human with another person, but it needs to be somebody you trust. And it's okay to do that. It's okay to reach out to spouse, to loved ones, to work colleagues, to peers, to say, look, I could do with a bit of time, just have a chat about some stuff. We try and keep that alive and we keep an eye on each other, our community, our group of friends and associates, quick WhatsApp groups and connections to each other as well. But I think what we try to do is still enable that human connection to do that. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that in the unhappy hours, you would have a group session where everyone's lifting a cup of something. And so I think the unhappy hour will probably be more connected on a one-to-one basis, someone you trust that you can actually do that. And a lot of counsellors and a lot of therapists these days are actually working remotely. So if you do need that more professional help, I would advocate going to find that. And actually there's a lot of people who are now working through Skype and Teams and Zoom. So look for that. I think from the happy hour side of things, making sure people have got the informal connections together is important. On happy hour, make sure you have the one-on-one connections with somebody you can trust, that you can actually then offload some of those events, maybe bounce around some ideas. And we do that as a firm as well as our community. So I advocate that, I think.
Let me say one thing quickly. I know you're probably struggling for time. I learned this from a lady called Pia Maria Torren, who wrote a book called Agile People. I was talking with her, and she told me what she does with teams. In the same way your clothes have care instructions, right? How to wash them, like dry clean only, or hand wash, or wash on 40. Right? We need our own care instructions individually. And she was talking about teams. Right? What do you need? Because I didn't know what you need. I tend to treat people as if they need what I need. But what I need half the time is to be left alone because I'm a massive introvert, right? My wife needs something completely different. She needs human connection. So that's why she appears next to me every time I go in a different room, right? But we've worked that out because we've written our care instructions. I need this much time on my own. I need this much connection. I need to get out and do some exercise. I need to do some chin-ups once a day, right? If you get that up, what every team member needs, right? Then we make sure that everyone gets what they need, and you can iterate on that. So you need a teamwork agreement, but you also need your individual care instructions as well, because otherwise people aren't going to know. And I found that it was such an obvious thing, but when she said it, I was like, oh, man, so she should totally do that. And it works with the family as well. And that's just another thing we've done recently that's been really powerful.
Yeah. I think that's some very, very good points there, and the way you describe it as care instructions is extremely valid. I mean, but the basic human requirements, though, as you touched on, John, stay very hydrated, eat really healthily, do some exercise each day. You know, it releases endorphins, makes you feel very, very happy. And if you get into a really good sort of routine of eating well, exercising well, and trying to get 2 to 3 liters of water every single day, it will make a huge difference to your state of mind. that's my 10 pence worth on it as well. Thank you very much, Jon and Karim, for your incredible talks tonight. Really enjoyed them. Jon, it was great to have you back, and Karim, it was great to have you back. Actually, you've spoken before in a face-to-face Agile London when you were at McKinsey. So thank you to you both. Thank you everyone else for joining us tonight as well. You know, again, these events don't happen without the speakers and without everyone else on here joining in and getting involved. And we do want to keep these running. I've got Agile London running every Wednesday up until the end of July. So you know, do continue to get involved. If you're looking for work, get in touch with me. My name's Alex Scriven, not Oliver Bernard. That's the name of the company I work for. So get in touch with me on LinkedIn. I'll do my best to help. If you're looking to hire, do the same as well. We'll be very keen to help you as well. If you want to speak on Agile London, and you know, I'm happy to provide the platform for you as well. So if you've got a 15-20 minute talk which you want to do and give it out, you know, if it's positive and a benefit to the Agile community, do reach out to me. I'd love to engage with you as well. One more thanks to sort of the Agile Centre and Jon and Karim for the discount code. I'm going to email all of you from our Meetup page. So, you know, now, you know, it is a great time to upskill and, you know, increase your learning. So do get involved with these guys. They're very good. I've known them all for some time. And as I say, there's a discount for going out tonight. So keep an eye on your messages from the Meetup page. That's it for this week. Thank you very much to everyone. Have a lovely evening and a great approaching weekend. And I will see you next Wednesday.
Thank you, Alex.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, everybody.